I'm Ro.
And I'm Salem.
Let's dive into the Scaryverse.
Back to this.
Hello, spooky besties.
I'm one of my new spooky besties. Do you think he would mind?
I think he would most definitely condone.
Okay, so we're talking to one of our brand new spooky besties, Paul Catalanata. Paul is Vintage 8 on YouTube, and he's also directed several feature films, horror films, as well as he has written a horror comic book, and he just has some really cool projects out, and we were so excited to get the opportunity to talk to him. We're so excited for you guys to hear the interview. It was honestly so unhinged, but also the most fun interview we've ever done.
Yes, he is very fun, easygoing, very interesting. I feel like we could have talked to him for hours, but I had to pee, so.
Yep. He has now informed us, and we're sorry, spooky besties, but he has informed us that our new sign off is we have to pee.
Yeah, I have to pee.
So, we are hanging out and talking with him, and that's coming up a little bit later in the podcast. We wanted to remind you guys that we are doing a giveaway this season, and we're having small giveaways each week. The winners of those small giveaways will then be entered into the grand prize drawing at the end of the season. And that grand prize drawing is sponsored by Fat Cow Cartoons and Amber's Apothecary. And we're still looking for some more sponsors to add on. But basically, what happens is each week you email us at scaryverspodcast@gmail.com. You have to listen to the podcast and then email us. There is no purchase necessary to enter. All you have to do is listen, email scaryverspodcast@gmail.com. And we will be posting the what are they called? The podcasts on Sundays. On the following Friday, we will do the drawing. When we do the drawing, we will use a randomizer from the internet. We'll plug in the names of the people who have emailed us, and once we get that random drawing name, we will email that person and say, "Hey, you won." You'll have 24 hours to respond to us and say, "Cool." If not, if you don't respond, we'll be moving on to the next person. And then when we record, we will announce who that week's winner was. Unless you do not want your name said on the podcast, which we totally understand, and we'll just say that person did not want their name announced.
Mm-hmm.
This last week's winner did not want their name announced, so, you win some, you lose some. However, we are going to then take every winner from each week from this season and put them in the grand prize drawing. The grand prize is going to be a basket full of goodies from our sponsors, from us. So you could see things like some artwork in there. There could be horror artwork. There could be some salves and bombs and things like that. We're still shopping. There could be coffee. And
there's most definitely going to be coffee.
There's just coffee. Who are we kidding? So we are looking for sponsors still. If you are a small business who wants to be shouted out on our podcast, let us know and we will get with you and talk about sponsoring the giveaway. We just added Amber's Apothecary, and she is so fun and so cool.
Yeah.
We met with her, and we instantly were like, this is why we started this podcast, because she is one of our spooky besties. She's been listening to the podcast for ages, and she just started her own business. She's making all of the goods in her apothecary herself. They're all homemade. She has some cool like moon cycle tea.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, she's got some different like balms and things like that that you can use.
Salves and stuff.
Salves, ointments that you can use on like cuts, burns, scrapes.
Mm-hmm.
They're safe to use on your pets.
Yes.
All natural ingredients. I really think that most of our spooky besties would be really excited to be able to use that on, like, I was excited to be able to get the one that she was telling us about to use on the dog's nose and paws.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm going to get some for Pixel's paws.
Yeah. So we're going to tag her on our social posts and stuff, but you guys can go visit her. She's on Instagram. She has a Facebook page. She has an Etsy shop. We'll make sure you guys know where to find her.
Mm-hmm.
And we are also sponsored, by Fat Cow Cartoons, who we've been sponsored by forever. She does all of our title art. She's amazing. She also does commission art pieces. So you can get stickers, ornaments, all kinds of stuff. Go check her Instagram out at PHAT Cow Cartoons. And you can buy us a coffee if you want to support the podcast and you don't know how you can go about supporting the podcast. Buying us a coffee is a great way. The money goes toward it's $5 to buy us a coffee. And you can go to buymeacoffee.com/scaryverse. And the money goes towards either actual literal coffee that we drink during the podcast, or it also goes towards our editing subscriptions. We have a subscription now, so Riverside.fm, so that we can bring you these awesome video interviews with all of our guests and post them on YouTube. It goes towards us getting equipment like these awesome headphones, this glowy ghost, the microphones that you hear us talking to on. It really helps us out. We're not able to actually monetize the podcast, so we don't make money out of this, and we both work full time. But the podcast is also kind of a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
It requires a lot of research, reaching out to people, social posts, recording, editing. And while it is super, super, super fun for us, it does take money to get put out to you guys, and we want to keep doing that. We want to bring you cool giveaways. We want to bring you fun stuff. We want to keep building our spooky bestie community, and buying us a coffee is the best way to help us do that.
Absolutely.
Well, it's something about being in horror films, right? You look at any positive situation and you just, okay, well, this can go wrong. That seems to make anybody who likes horror films, if you watched enough of them, like just any happy situation can turn into a horror movie. I mean, it's just one thing away.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, and it doesn't really help that I'm currently in film school, and I'm currently taking a horror film class, and they've just like really pointed out all of the ways that things can go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So,
where are you going to film school, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm actually going to school online at Arizona State University.
Cool. I'm a proud privateer, University of New Orleans. That's where I got my master's.
Awesome. That's so cool. I want to get my master's after I get my bachelor's degree, but it's taken me like 20 years to get a bachelor's degree because I had a series of unfortunate events. The first time I went to college, I went to film school in Pittsburgh, and my roommate tried to off me. So
there's that.
That is a great story. Great story.
It was interesting, but it kind of put me off going to school, and I moved home and went to community college and did broadcasting and telecommunications. So I've been working in radio for the last several years, and while working in radio, I've been like, man, I really need to go back and finish my film degree. So
Man, that's a heck of a story. I mean, I don't know if I've ever heard anyone say that. Yeah, school was great till like my roommate tried to create a horror movie, a real life horror movie in my in the dorm. Yeah, I'm just gonna kind of do something else now.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You should write that. Like, I mean, there are people who would probably pay for that story.
I should. It's kind of a crazy story of how it happened too, because she tried multiple times. Like it wasn't just like a one-off thing.
That kind of makes me think of Happy Death Day a little bit, because what isn't it her roommate who was actually trying to?
I think so. I can't remember exactly. That movie was fun.
They stole that from you.
No, that's just a great story. Like, I, I just like that's just a great line. Oh, she tried to do it, and then you're like, well, just one. Well, that was one time she did. She tried multiple times. You're lucky she's just very unsuccessful. I mean, you're very fortunate. She was really bad. It's okay. She was really bad at it.
I wonder if
Yeah.
she has, been successful since then with offing someone.
So,
oh my goodness.
I went home for Thanksgiving break, and that's when I decided that I wasn't going to go back the next semester.
Mhm.
And she went home for Thanksgiving break and got diagnosed with a mental illness. So she's been medicated since. So I think I'm probably the only person that she's tried to off. But the fact that she tried multiple times and just like didn't get away with it, I didn't realize how serious it was until I left school and moved home. Because like I tried telling my RA about it, and they were like, "Oh, that's just Jess." And I tried telling the school that I didn't feel safe and that I wanted to like switch roommates, but it was mostly a commuter school, so they didn't have a whole lot of dorm space. And because of that, they couldn't like offer me like a private room or anything.
Yeah, and they were like, we don't want her trying to off, someone else. So
yeah, well, they
it's
told
your
me if I
problem.
could find somebody who would like be willing to switch with me, that I could switch. But at that point, it was such a small school. Everybody had heard about how she had tried to off me, and nobody wanted to live with her.
Wow.
This is like a horror comedy all over the place. Like, I mean, like, I'm just like, you contrast that with like these very extreme, horrible scenarios, and then you're trying to talk to somebody about it, and like, are you sure you're not making a big deal out of nothing here? I mean, that is hilarious, and it's horrible. I'm sorry you went through that. It's terrible.
It's okay, because honestly, at the time, I didn't notice how bad it was. And by the time I realized how bad it was, I was far out of the situation.
Yeah.
So thank
She's
goodness.
not that bad. She's not that bad.
Like, maybe you're misunderstanding what she's trying to do.
Yeah, I
It's
think
all
it was
a
just
big
that she wasn't
misunderstanding.
successful and I never got hurt. And that was why they didn't think it was a big deal. They probably thought it was just like a squabble and I was being dramatic or something, but it was not.
Yeah. Well, I'm
That
glad
is
she's
great.
medicated now. I'm glad she's gotten the help she needed.
Yeah, me too. But so anyway, I'm Ro, by the way.
Nice to meet you. That's the best story I've heard in a long time. That is. I'm sorry that happened, but like I will like just know I will tell other people that you've told me this story. Like,
Yeah.
it's on this podcast. Scary, check them out. But like this, she was telling me how she was almost murdered. It was great.
Yeah, so if you want to add some detail in there, the first time she tried to off me, she tried to suffocate me with my own pillow in the middle of the night.
Wow.
And I woke up while she was doing it, and she was like, "Oh, I thought this was my bed."
I thought I was trying to suffocate myself.
Yeah.
Whoops.
I always push really hard on my pillows before I try to get them soft. I'm softening it up.
Just trying to fluff my pillow on your face. Sorry.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
And then
didn't mean to wake you up.
Yeah. Thank goodness I woke up, because I'm like a really light sleeper. So there was no way she was going to get away with that. And I feel like she didn't realize how difficult it is to actually suffocate somebody.
You woke up when she was just standing, like hovering over you, breathing very heavily.
Yep.
Sorry,
so
I thought
funny.
this was my bed.
No, it was really funny.
Oh no. That's hilarious. What's so funny is you're so unscarred. You seem so unencumbered and unscarred by it. It's like It's not that big a deal. Haven't
Well,
you ever been involved in attempted murder?
so
God.
many things have happened since then.
I mean, I've had 21 years to get over it, so that's probably why. But yeah, no, she told my best friend that she wanted to push me down the stairs to see what would happen when I cracked my skull open on the stairs.
Yes, you should be writing this. Like,
Yeah.
if you take nothing from this, like when you get off this and like, yeah, this Paul guy, not a great interview or anything, you should at least go like, like, man, I'm gonna write my story. And then I'm gonna go to the show one day, I'm gonna see this, it's like, man, this looks so familiar.
Yeah. I should do it. I should do it. A lot of people have told me I should write a book,
Yeah, for real.
but
Or
I
at
should
least
just
a
write a
short.
screenplay.
Or
Yeah.
at least a short.
Yeah.
What a great story. That's great. That's great. It's great.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed the story.
How could you not? It has everything. You even survived at the end. It's great.
Yeah. And I guess I'm my own final girl in my own story.
Right.
That's so sad.
There you go. A
Wow.
title. My own final girl.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit jealous that somebody hasn't tried to like murder me. My brother has stabbed me with a pencil and busted my head open, but that was an accident. So,
Well, it happens.
but with the whole pencil thing, I like to make a joke about how that was my first tattoo because he like stabbed me in the shoulder.
Oh my God.
I was in first grade and it's still there. So I think my first tattoo was, from my brother stabbing me with a pencil.
There you go. She just gave you a great line. Like y'all could be. That's how it ends. You're on the podcast, and you're whoever's cast is the pod. You're with you is like, man, I wish I had a story like that. Don't worry, you're young. There's plenty of time for you still for somebody to try to murder you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
That is true. That's so funny.
My time just hasn't come yet, so
I'm pulling for you. I hope you win, though.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
God, this is the craziest conversation. It's awesome.
I feel like this has been the most unhinged interview we've done so far.
Yeah.
Because we just started with chaos.
We haven't even gotten started yet. Yeah. And I'm Salem. It's nice to meet you.
I'm Paul. Nice to meet y'all.
And how do you say your last name? Because I'm not 100% sure if I'm saying it right. Let me say it first, and I'm sorry if I butcher it. Is it Catalinato?
Close, Catalinato.
What do you think got you into horror to begin with?
My mom got me into horror movies. My mom watched horror movies, and when I turned, man, I could remember back as far as 8 years old watching Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th and all these scary movies with my mom. She liked them, so once she knew that I wasn't going to be scared of the boogeyman, she let me watch all that stuff. My mom, it's funny, every now and again when I bring the kids to let them stay the night, every now and again I'll stay later just and still watch a scary movie with my mom. My wife likes it too, though. She likes it too, but my mom, to be honest with you, she watches harder movies than my wife does.
I love that for you because we had like two different experiences growing up. I was like completely not allowed to watch horror movies, and then she was like really exposed to them. And I feel like my friends who were exposed to them at younger ages either have one of two experiences. They either love horror movies or they were so traumatized that they never want to see another horror movie ever again.
Yeah, I run into some people like that, but horror movies are horror stories. I mean, those are the oldest stories in which that we've been telling ourselves, right? Like you have kids, like what did we tell them? Don't go in the woods, monsters will eat you. Maybe there weren't real monsters in the woods, but there were things that would eat them. So you teach them with these movies. I mean, what I like about horror films now, don't get me wrong, when I was young, I liked them because I thought they were fun, but as I've gotten older, what I still like about them is that they're great teaching tools. One of the things I like saying is you can't have a movie. You can't, especially today, you can't get people talking about social issues like mental illness, for one thing. You can't get people to have an honest conversation about it. But you put it in a scary movie like Hereditary, now everybody can talk about it because it gets rid of the stigma and you're talking about the horror, even though we're talking about Hereditary. Night of the Living Dead, a movie a great movie that focuses on racism, but that's not what the general public probably saw at the time. They saw a zombie movie, but there's a clear message in that movie, a very positive message in this movie. And I think horror movies are great when they are able to do those things, or horror stories. You look at a lot of what Stephen King's done. There, especially his earlier movies. Earlier stories. There are a lot of positive things behind the scary stuff. I
Right.
just think it's just easier. It's easier to talk about things through scary subjects. To be honest, that's my takeaway anyway.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I mean, even going back to like the original fairy tales, they were created with the purpose to warn children about different things that could happen to them.
Mhm.
And they were much more intense than the
Mm-hmm.
fairy tales that we have today, or the versions of the same fairy tales that we have today. And I feel like horror movies and horror stories kind of took over that direction and went with that. And that's super similar to what you were saying. So,
No, no, right on. I agree. I do. I do think that. I think and we're all guilty of loving those horror movies that are just empty calories, right? The Friday the
mhm,
13th movies. Those are empty calories, but they're great, right? But
yeah,
for every Friday the 13th, there are like The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing. That's a great movie. That's about a very nihilistic movie. And if you look like even closer, it was saying a lot of things about the current time that it was in. With the gas shortages and just trusting each other. For every one of those, we do have The Thing, and I do prefer the movies that are a little more cerebral, I guess, but I still watch those other empty calorie movies. I can promise you, I'll be seeing like Abigail. I will be there opening night on that one.
absolutely. I'm really looking forward to that one. And I really love the fun horror movies that the empty calorie ones, but I also really enjoy the ones that make you think. But I've noticed that recently, a lot of them are ones that I end up not liking, and then I'll like rewatch it later, and it's like it's weird because it depends on like your mood and like how much you're paying attention as how much you get out of it. And I feel like that makes me feel like how much I like it. Like I was not a fan of Hereditary the first time that I watched it, but I loved Midsummer. So
Yeah, I was just gonna say the first time I watched Midsummer, I wasn't a fan of it, and then I watched it again, and in particular, this time that I watched it, I had also had a weed gummy, and it I feel like it helped, like the experience with watching it. Like I was able to on a more deeper level uh get the kind of the message that was in that movie and everything. And at one point I even had to turn it off because I was like, "Ooh, this is very intense," and take a break from it and then go back to it. But I really, after rewatching it and maybe even being able to just like focus on it more, I really liked Midsummer. There was one that when we were talking about all of this, that I wanted to bring up, and now I can't remember what it was.
I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, but I know that
it'll come back to me at some point.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, out of the projects that you've worked on, what has been one of your favorite ones and why?
Man, I have to say, I do want to say this before I go to that. Midsummer was one that took me a while to warm up to, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
It did, but I like it more now, so I understand what you mean. Hereditary, it instantly liked it. But I guess of my favorite projects, that changes week to week, really.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much you guys are familiar with stuff that I've done. I've done feature films. I've done right now. I've been really concentrating on the analog horror page, my Vintage 8 page. I also got a comic book, Edie. And I guess if I had to say right now, Edie is probably one of my favorite projects that I've gotten to do. Mainly because I mean when you're working in horror films, you a lot of times you don't get the budgets that you want. And with a comic book, that was one of it looks the way I wanted it to look, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that might be why that project's kind of near and dear. It looks what my imagination thought it would look like, you know? And then I guess if we were to talk about my analog horror channel, Children Under the House, that would be my favorite analog that I've done. And, and I've done a couple of shorts and I've done a feature, Sacrilege, which the process of that was pretty great too.
Yeah, I really want to watch Sacrilege. I went looking for it and it said it was supposed to be on Tubi, and I found a Sacrilege on Tubi, but it wasn't the one that you worked on. I was very disappointed about that. And then did you say it was The Children Under the Stairs?
Under the House.
Under the House. I really wanted to watch that one too. Both of those look so interesting. I was able to watch The Thing Inside of Us, and I really enjoyed that. Like, going back and like kind of talking about what you were mentioning before about like the stories that horror stories can tell and kind of like teach. I feel like that's a really good one because there's like this virus, and then just everything there's kind of like a lot going on, but I don't know, I really enjoyed that one a lot.
Yeah,
it's really up my alley as
Where
well.
Did you watch it?
Amazon Prime.
Oh, you did get it on Amazon Prime? So I'm gonna send you. Let's see here. I have my computer on just in case y'all ask me a question I didn't know.
Yeah, we definitely went and looked for your movies as soon as we knew we were doing this interview, and we checked out your YouTube channel and everything. So I think the only thing we haven't looked at is your comic book.
Yeah, which is something I've been meaning to talk to my husband about, that because he's very much into like graphic novels and comic books and everything.
My husband is too, so he's going to be really excited because he's been looking for like a horror comic book to get into. So I feel like he would really enjoy your comic book.
Appreciate that. I hope so. I just sent you a link to Sacrilege. It's on my YouTube channel now. I have it on there because I got all the rights back to the movie recently. It's gonna go back on Tubi. I have a friend who's getting it back up for me. He's a distributor, so he'll have that up. I don't know how long that takes. Maybe a month, maybe two. But you can watch it on YouTube right now.
Yeah, I watched the trailer on there. I didn't notice the movie was on there. When you say you just got the rights back, was it like very recently?
I guess maybe within a month.
Okay,
because it's been up a month. I guess it's YouTube. I mean,
when I watched that trailer, I was like super excited to watch it because it just is another like the things that you have worked on is just very much what I'm into. So like when the first thing that I did was like look up what I could watch like right then and there, and The Thing Inside of Us was the one that I was able to, and then I instantly messaged one of my best friends because he's really into aliens, like very, very much into it. So I was like, have you seen this? I was going to be very surprised if he had told me that he hadn't seen it. And then we like talked about it for a few hours that night. So like, yeah, I was very excited to watch that movie.
Well, I appreciate that. So that particular movie, that thing, so The Thing Inside of Us, you can actually now watch also on my channel, but it's renamed Married to a Sleepwalker. And
I saw something about that, and I got a little confused because I was like, I thought it was called The Thing Inside of Us.
I know. I watched it on the YouTube, and then you were talking about it, and I was like, are they the same thing? And then I was like, no, I got to be wrong.
No, they are. So that's maybe a funny story, maybe not funny story. So I made that movie actually before COVID happened. I made that movie. I started working on it in 2019. Yeah, it's actually, I even did a behind the scenes on the movie. So we started on that in 2019. I had started teaching at LSU, And one of the things is when so after I sold, just even go further back. So when I got Sacrilege out, they asked me to do a part-time residency at LSU. So I agreed, and then I started teaching editing and an intro class. Well, anyway, I always like telling students or even other filmmakers, movies love money. They absolutely love money, but don't let money stop you from making a movie. And I've always had a little bit of money on my movies, but never nothing. So I got called out by one of my students. He said, like, you give this advice, but you've never had nothing and made a movie. So I was like, you know what, you're right. So that summer I started writing a movie. I was going to make it for nothing, and I made this movie for nothing. When you see the thing, when you watch Married to a Sleepwalker or The Thing Inside of Us, I shot, directed, edited, wrote, set design, I held the mic, I did every single job on that behind the camera. The only things I didn't do were act, and I didn't do their makeup. And I didn't dress them. That was the three things I didn't do on that movie. So I literally did the whole thing. I put the whole movie together. And the goal was to make the movie for as little as I can. The final budget was $260 something, I think. We made it
Wow.
for that little, and I wanted to get it distributed. Now, over the middle, when we had 3 days left of in production of that movie, because we took time off, we shot 2 weeks, and then we shot on weekends, and we had 2 or 3 days left, and then COVID happened. So COVID happened, and of course we're kind of laughing a little bit. It's like, yeah, this movie's kind of like what's going on, and so COVID lasted a lot longer than we thought. But while we were quarantined, I started cutting it together just to keep people or keep Chad and Christine motivated. So soon as they lifted the first quarantine, we shot it. We shot the last 3 scenes. I think they quarantined us again, and I finished the movie. And when things came back, I mean, I was able to get a distribution deal. I think largely because there was no inventory. People weren't making anything, and especially I had a disease movie right when COVID was wrapped or still really going on. It was an easy deal. The only thing is, the reason why you see it on YouTube is I never made any money from the movie. Because although I cut the movie, I did it for less than $200. Whenever you get a movie in distribution, you then have to get your E&O insurance, which is so somebody doesn't sue you if you made a mistake with somebody's likeness or something, or your paperwork, or for whatever reason. That's $3,000. Then they had to remix the movie because I did it for an online audience, but they had to get it in a 5.1 channel, get it ready for overseas. So I started paying, they had to put a lien against the movie to have it mixed. So I don't think the movie has made all the money back for them yet, to where if I've seen anything. So I asked them, I was like, look, I mean, I made the movie for $200. I've not seen anything. Can I just put it on my YouTube channel? And they agreed. They were very nice about it. They said, look, just change the name, make it look a little different so it doesn't interfere with what we're doing. And they were very gracious, gave me permission to put it on my channel. I cut it in 9 parts. I changed the resolution. Instead of very wide, I made it more 1920 by 1080. I made it more black and white for my YouTube channel. I also added some references to the things that are going on my channel, like the Tangy virus and the alien that frequencies some of my other little shorts, and I put it up 9 parts. I also took all the music out of it. So if you watched it on Amazon Prime, there's a lot more score. It's a lot more of a presentation. You get the sense that that Daniel's character is making a movie, whereas in the online version of it, it's more like, okay, he's cutting it together, but it's not as clean. It's a lot more rough. And one of the reasons I did that was because I used to try to get it in front of the found footage groups on Facebook, and they were like, this isn't found footage. This is fake found footage. So I was like, okay, fine. So whenever I remade it, I made it black and white so that they would appreciate it. Now I get no trouble with it. But with that being said, that's the long story of that particular project. And, And the people who've seen it on YouTube have been very complimentary on it. I I would love for you to watch it. I mean, I know that you watched it on Amazon Prime. I would love for both of you to switch
Yeah.
it,
I was
watch
gonna
it.
say I'm already totally into rewatching it on your channel
I
to
was just gonna
see.
say I
Yeah.
now want to watch it with the score and everything.
Because like there's a lot of score in it. I mean, I cut it down, and I mean, it's the same movie essentially, but in a lot of ways it's different. And if I mean, my honest opinion, it plays better as an online YouTube series. My
Yeah.
honest to God opinion. But I mean, teach their own, and everybody has their different thoughts. Nobody watches the same movie, but that's the story of that movie. And the reason I did it was because after Sacrilege, we were successful in the United States with Sacrilege, but what happened is the movie got pirated all over during distribution, and we never got a very solid overseas release. So although the movie was released, did fairly well, got really good reviews. I mean, I can even remember Dread Central giving me a good review, which I can remember being so happy with that. But we got pirated. We didn't get our foreign release, so I got the rights back for that movie. It went 7 years, and then I just took the right. Once it was done, I just took the rights back, and I put it on YouTube just so that people who wanted to see it and couldn't see it who couldn't see it overseas could now see it.
Wow,
So
that's
That's
really interesting.
so cool. I'm glad that we really talked about your YouTube channel, because one of the things that I wanted to mention during this interview was, before I looked up your YouTube, I had no idea what an analog horror channel was. And I didn't know that there was like a lot of people doing that kind of thing. And I feel like that's something that a lot of our audience would be really interested in. So I was going to ask if you could kind of explain what it is, and go over, just a brief overview of your specific YouTube.
oh, we're now going down the rabbit hole now. Analog horror, man. So my YouTube channel is some analog horror. I will say one of my goals with the YouTube channel is to work on ideas to try to fine tune ideas for a bigger audience. That's what I use it for, but I also do analog horror too. And what I mean by that is like like Children Under the House, right? I took that idea and I just finished just yesterday the script for that, turning it into a graphic novel because people have really responded to that particular story. I think it has legs. So I think, and if I read a lot of the comments on my channel, a lot of people love it. They would love to see more about it in a different, venue or a different kind of the same story, but in a different way. So, I mean, that's why I ended up making the book. I don't know if y'all know that, but earlier last year, I took Children Under the House and I turned it into a graphic novel. And basically sold it on Amazon Prime. And the reason I did that was because just people wanted the art. So I was like, okay, well the best thing I can do here is I'll make a book. I put all the lines in it, and you can literally watch the movie and follow along with your book at the same time. And some people really love that. And just yesterday I uploaded a video. I told whoever buys it, I'm going to donate 10% to Save the Children because that felt like the right thing to do. Yesterday, I donated 20% of what it made to the charity because it just because of what it's about. When you watch the movie, I won't ruin it, but when you watch it, you'll understand. It just felt right to give put that money somewhere. But what is analog horror? I have two definitions for it. One is, I guess, the more traditional definition is it's basically any kind of horror that has relation to the old analog medium like VHS tapes, old signals, film, anything like that that can be haunted. I think because everything now is streaming digital, so easy to find. I think there's just an inherent fear of like finding a random VHS tape, like The Ring or the
Yeah.
VHS series that like, okay, this is creepy, and I think there's just this there's a collective fear of that in our, I guess, Generation Z, because I think Generation Z really responds to it. The other definition I have for it is how scary can you be with being as cheap as possible? Because that was one of the things with the thing inside of us, and why I brought it to my YouTube channel. When I was getting reviews for it, I was always stuck with the fact that, well, why are people talking about I made this movie for less than $500? Like, no one mentioned that. So I started researching, and that's when I discovered analog horror. It's like, well, people are doing this already. People are
Yeah.
making movies for nothing. They're being very scary for nothing, for dollars, for pennies, just their own imagination. I was like, well, there's nothing special about what I did, because people were being way more effective with even less. You think about some of the things that's already out there, and that's why I started taking an interest in it. It was like, well, I've not made one of these. I want to make any, if it's a horror genre, I want to try my hand at it, and that's what got me into it. But that to me is what it is. And I guess the third thing is I think it's also comes out of the fact that we now see movies where everything looks so real, right?
Yeah.
Everything looks, just like whatever your imagination, if you got the money, you can make this. And I think it's kind of the counterculture to that. And it's these very, like Microsoft Word horrors, like these, what do they call them, PowerPoint horror movies. It's like, well, how effective, we could be just as effective with no money. So.
I think that's really awesome. And that's definitely a way better explanation than I could have given for what it is. So thank you. And I think that you are really effective with it as well. And it's funny because we're always talking on the podcast about how I don't get scared by horror movies anymore. And I'm always looking for a horror movie that actually scares me because I kind of want to get that feeling again that I got like the first few horror movies that I watched, and being scared by them. And it's funny because it's like very simple things that end up actually scaring me when I do get scared by it. And it's usually the movies that I'm expecting to not find scary at all that I find scary. But I think that's another reason why those like 2-sentence horror stories are so popular on the internet.
Yeah, I really like those.
Because it leaves a lot to your imagination. And I feel like sometimes our imagination can be much more scary than anything that you can see on the screen.
I agree with you, absolutely. And I think a lot of that is with what analog horror does. If you heard me mention Children of the House, it essentially, all the entire movie is I drew children's drawings and I got my wife to narrate it. So the pitch is this. A little girl loses her voice, and the only way she communicates is through her drawings. But she claims she saw ghosts under the house. So what ends up happening is that she's going to a therapist, that's who my wife plays, and all we see are the drawings, because it says, we don't have the rights to, show the children or show them, but the parents did give me rights to their drawings. So she's talking to another therapist by a tape recorder, and she's just going over the pictures. And as it goes on, it goes into a whole murder mystery.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I really need to go check it out. One of the reasons that I'm not a big fan of YouTube in general is because when you go to somebody's channel, sometimes depending on like what service you're using to access YouTube, it's like it can be difficult to find the best parts to look at. So I'm really glad that we're doing this, and I'm able to like now go and search for specific things to watch.
That I agree with you, because what ends up happening is people only see your new stuff, and it's not the easiest thing to go through. I've noticed that too. I created a playlist called "For Those Doing a Deep Dive," and I think I need to even be clear about it, because even a lot of people, they missed it, and I'll get messages throughout the day like, "Hey, what should I watch?" And But like I have a playlist called For Those Doing a Deep Dive. I have a website that has everything that's happened on the site in a timeline. Just to make things as easy as possible. I've really am trying to approach it as a very serious genre, and and do the things that we would do in bigger budgeted stuff.
It definitely comes across that way. And it's amazing how much you can do with such little resources, really. And I think it's awesome that it's kind of like a family affair and your wife is involved and all of that stuff. So
My oldest daughter has a line in it too, so it was all three of us.
Oh, that
But
is
look,
really cool.
I will say this because I get the sense that y'all grew up on the same kind of movies I did. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but y'all probably enjoyed going to Blockbuster, finding the new horror films
Mm-hmm.
that were in the dusty section of the Blockbuster, finding
yeah,
the weirdest indie stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
yeah, definitely.
I have a strong belief now, and I've talked a lot about this even in my classes and anybody who will listen to me, like anybody who's trying to get into this work. YouTube is that now. YouTube is
Yeah.
where those movies are happening. And there are places where you can find some really cool shorts like Altered and Crypt TV,
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
this is where the indie scene is now. Because we're when you make a movie, what we used to make money doing this is from the DVD and VHS sales. That's gone away, so it's harder for these very indie movies to make money because there's tons of them. And really, the home of that is Tubi, right? Tubi's kind of where
Mm-hmm.
some of that stuff goes. But like, if you think one step below Tubi, it's on YouTube, and it's a great place just to try things out because there's some things you just can't do for an audience. There's some stories you can't tackle. YouTube allows you to really work on presentation, really experiment with presentation because there's no stakes, there's no distributor, the only audience is whoever subscribes to you, and if they don't like it, they'll tell you I don't like it, but hey, maybe the next one. Tubi, there's a little bit more stakes because you'll go 10 minutes in Tubi. I didn't like it. Go to something else,
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
it makes it harder to make a living doing that. So I think YouTube is going to be, for anybody who's looking to be a filmmaker, even a comic book writer, or any kind of storyteller, I do think like YouTube and other media like that, you're going to have to learn how to use that, get those stories out there. Because I guess the last thing I'll say on my soapbox, my giant soapbox, but like, when Evil Dead was made, right? Sam Raimi and his friends, they went to the cabin in the woods. They borrowed money from all their dentist friends and all their friends, and they made this movie, right? Then they went and found their audience. I don't think you can do that today. Today, you have to make your audience, then find your audience, then make your movie.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Before we started doing the podcast together, we started really watching a lot of horror movies together for the podcast. My husband started a Facebook group back when they were still kind of popular, where he was writing horror movie reviews. And because of that, we met a lot of filmmakers. And I was always surprised at how they were putting their movies together. A lot of them are crowdfunded now,
Yeah.
that are largely distributed. And I just feel like you're right with YouTube. It kind of cuts out that whole process where you don't have to worry so much about that, and you can really just focus on the art and putting it out.
Yeah, and then what you're hoping is you nourish that audience, you take care of that audience long enough so when you do get a chance to do something bigger, they follow you. They're
Yeah.
interested, So, I mean, that's what you're hoping for.
Yeah, I think that it's a really great way to cultivate audience, because I feel like once you have those like core people who are always going to be looking for what you do, that's a great way to then also market yourself. And I mean, it's genius to me.
Well, I mean, it works for everything. I mean, you see, and I'm sure you guys have been doing this long enough to probably see too, is like us podcasters do the same thing, right? You're on those groups meeting people. Hey, I'm doing this. Come on the show. You create a new fan. You create somebody else that knows what you're doing. It's all that's synergy, right? And that's
Yeah.
really what it is. I mean, what we're doing right now, just what 10 years ago would have cost a fortune.
Yeah.
Now we just
Yeah.
got laptops.
Yeah, we've been really surprised by the response to our podcast through social media.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we kind of set out to do was to grow a community of people who love horror. And we always joke that we're like the weird kids at the party. And
Mm-hmm.
we wanted to find our other spooky besties who we can kind of share that with instead of telling people like the normal people all the time. We can talk
Yeah.
to people
And
who appreciate what we have to say.
kind of like what you were saying about with YouTube with trying to I guess grow an audience or whatever. That's what we were trying to do a lot on TikTok to grow an audience and like get our the word out about our podcast and everything, because TikTok is one of the somewhat easier platforms to grow and everything.
Yeah, the
And
way that your videos get pushed out is a lot easier to grow, but the problem with that is that it might be going away.
yeah.
And this season, we were really focusing on collaborating with other people and helping to like boost other people's projects as well as boost ours at the same time. And it's been a really fun experience meeting all of the people. But everybody who we have interviewed so far, we've met, well, with the exception of the people who are local to us, we met through Threads. So I think social media can do so many things, and it's so crazy.
Yeah, not to mention how new Threads is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that has been a really fun experience with meeting, new community.
Yeah.
And well, too, it'd be like horror films. We're small niche. We're small group. We're also real loyal. I've noticed that, horror fans are really cool people. You know that,
Yes.
like they really tight. They're not cliquey, really either. But if you like a horror movie, like oh man, let's talk about it all day long. It's horror fans typically are really cool people. I find that's at least that's what I find.
I totally agree. I think for the most part, for if you're going to speak in general terms, most people who love horror movies are really cool people. I mean, we have come across those kind of like bad horror fans that you see that are like, oh, well, you're not a horror fan if you don't like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
movie. And it's
Or if
usually,
you haven't seen this or that or whatever.
yeah, and it's usually like the worst, most graphic type stuff that like nobody wants to watch and it's not enjoyable.
Yeah, that's a different. That's a subset. I can still remember I was talking to a producer when I first got into this, and she told me because she always liked hanging out with us, the horror directors, and I asked her like why she liked hanging out with horror filmmakers, and she said horror filmmakers are the nicest people you ever meet. She goes, it's the people who write comedies are the ones you got to watch out for. He goes, those people are crazy. That's not my words. That was hers.
That's so funny because I feel like we're noticing a lot more of that with some of like the documentaries that have been coming out recently, like Quiet on Set that talked about all of the kids shows on Nickelodeon, but a lot of those were comedies and.
What it is it just when you're a comedian, it takes a lot stronger stuff to make you laugh. I guess is what it is. That's what she told me anyway. I can still remember that conversation. Ugh, you talk about a horror story. That documentary, that's a horror story. God,
Yes.
ugh.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the only things that really scare me anymore are like true crime documentaries because you know it actually happened, or documentaries like that where it's just it's awful because we grew up, we're in our late 30s, so we grew up watching a lot of those shows, and some of them came out when we were older, but a lot of them we grew up watching, and it's just like it ruined our childhood.
Yeah, and I mean a lot of them I still watched when I was older too. Like it
Yeah.
took me I still do watch some of that stuff.
I mean,
I
yeah, it's nostalgic now, though.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that guy, one of the guys, I mean, they were talking about, I mean, I know he was the guy, he was in Head of the Class. I can remember
Yep.
watching that show.
Yeah, my husband watched that show. I didn't ever watch it, but he was like, as soon as I put on the documentary, he goes, "Ugh, Dan Schneider, I hated him. He was in Head of the Class."
What sucks though is it ruins it too. When that
Yeah,
stuff does happen, it completely puts it makes it hard to revisit that stuff sometimes. It just like I don't know, it taints it, and then you can't look at it the same way without bringing those bad feelings into it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's sad. Um, it's really crazy how some of the things that are real life are what may more horrific than like horror films, which are enjoyable to us.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the thing is in real life, there's no cathartic ending, right? We don't get
Right,
that. Either I guess the final girl gets away, and we're left with that feeling, or the bad guy wins in the horror film. But it's like, oh well, they made a mistake. There's just no resolve, and then when these things happen, so it's
right.
like it's just where you go from there. It's just this forever feeling of no resolve.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah,
think that nah, I know I'm familiar with the documentary. I couldn't sit through it.
I haven't been able to watch it. I can't bring myself to sit down and watch it.
I'm the worst one that watched the whole thing.
I to go back to what you were saying a little bit though with the person who really enjoyed hanging out with you and talking to you and everything because of the fact that she was saying that she feels like you guys are like really nice or whatever. I agree with that. Like, I feel like people who are in this type of field and who are really into horror, um, things that like-minded individuals, we start these interviews feeling extremely nervous and not knowing how it's going to go down. And every single person that we've interviewed has been so laid back and nice, like instantly makes us feel, like, uh, at home, like we're
Yeah.
talking to an old friend, like that. You instantly, like, as soon like when your face popped up and everything, because we're like trying to get like all of the technical difficulties worked out, and then you pop up and we're like, oh gosh. And then you just like started talking to us like you're an old friend. And then
Yeah.
our last interview was with a lady who's been doing like paranormal tours and everything for like the past over 20 years. Same thing. She was like so cool and so laid back, like an old friend. And I think that's what we really like about, this community that we're kind of like bringing together and getting more involved in is
Yeah.
learning that the people that we're like meeting and working with are a lot like we are. And I think that's really cool and important to,
Yeah,
this
I
whole thing.
totally agree, especially because like we've made a lot of friends who are also horror filmmakers, or they are just making horror content for social media. A lot of them are podcasters, or they have YouTube, or and a lot of them have also created their own communities for fellow content creators, and they have been so gracious in like accepting us into their community, because I know like when we started talking to several of the people, we were like, oh man, they're not gonna think that we're good enough, because we're just little baby content creators. We're just barely starting out. We don't really know what we're doing. But everybody's been so nice, and so many people have offered us help and to give us kind of like tutorials on how to use editing software and stuff like that.
Absolutely, because that's something that I am coming to realize, like especially with you, Paul. You seem to be very much into like wanting to not just share the art but teach it, and that I don't know. I just really love that level of passion and just the art that goes into all of it. It's just I don't know if I'm articulating myself the way that I'm
Oh no, you're
wanting
doing
to,
great.
but
No, I understand. I mean, I appreciate that. I mean, I think that's a great. I mean, I hope I'm worthy of that compliment. I do try to, you do try. I mean, you do get better when you do teach it. I do. I will also tell you that a lot of great filmmakers taught it and they got better after. But I mean, why wouldn't you? I don't know how I would say, but like, I mean, why wouldn't you want to help somebody out?
Yeah.
You
right.
might somebody might have the best story in them, and all they needed was a little pickup. I really do try to tell people all the time. It it's all a magic trick. Movies, podcasting, it's all a magic trick. It's a couple of well placed shots or lines that keep you engaged. And that's
Right.
really
Yeah.
what it's about. It's just how do you keep people from looking beyond the magic trick, and that's really what it's all about. And I mean, I teach at LSU. I still do it mainly because I like being around young filmmakers. I love watching student films. They're never, it's not because they're great, they usually aren't. I mean, I don't mean to be mean about it, but usually the audio is really bad and the cuts are bad. But what you can't make up for in any production, even my own, is the amount of passion and love they put into them when they're really into it. So they
Yeah.
win you over. And if you could think about how they have to win you over despite the bad audio, the out of focus shots, and the acting that might not quite be where you want it to be. But they that's how much passion they usually put into them, because and they'll win you over just about every time if you let them. If you let them, they'll win you over, and because they're so passionate. I mean, why wouldn't you want to nurture that, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Rising tides raises all ships.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love how collaborative in nature the horror community is as
Hmm.
well, because I don't know, it just makes our job much more fun.
Well, you got to look at it this way. If I mean, I know we've all heard the stereotypic stories about the crazy directors who think the world revolves around them. I will tell you, those are less and less now because the world's such a small place. We all got to get along, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You don't work. If you're a jerk, you don't work. But also today, specifically in the world that we're living in, if you don't have an audience going to see your movie, they don't like you, you're not going to have a career, because a lot of it does come into that. People people go see movies not just because the premise is cool. There's a reason why stars work. We find people, our avatars that we like, and the same goes with filmmakers. If you hear about a movie and like, man, I saw this interview with this guy, total jerk, he was so rude, I can't stand him. Well, what chance? It doesn't matter if you made the next Hellraiser movie. Nobody's going to see it because you're a jerk. Can't get that bad taste out your mouth. I mean,
Right.
we're all
Yeah,
in the same boat.
I totally agree. Is there any advice that you haven't already mentioned that you would give to an up and coming filmmaker who is just starting out?
Absolutely, make stuff. Biggest problem with filmmakers is they are always waiting for things to be right. I'm guilty of
Hmm.
this. At one time, I was guilty of this. I would write my ideas. Well, no, I'm not going to do this idea because it needs this much money on it. Cut all that out. Work on ideas that you can do now. If you're in film school, write 2 scripts. Write one that you can make with your buddies in the back of your house or in your house or in your backyard in the forest. Wherever you live, there's something you can do. Have that script ready, and make the script that if Paramount Pictures calls you, you have ready. Chances are the Paramount Pictures script is gonna wait a little while.
Yeah.
Work on the one, be ready to make that movie the moment you get out of film school. If you're not in film school or you just want to make movies, go make movies. Filmmakers make movies. It's in the title of the job description. Filmmaker,
Right.
right? Movie maker, video maker. You don't have to make a feature. Make a short. The point is make your stuff. Like I said, movies love money, but don't let money stop you from making your movie. There are ideas that you can do that don't require anything. Children are the house, ream of paper and a scanner. I tried to, I actually submitted to the Guinness Book of World Records to try to get it as the lowest budget movie ever made. They discontinued the competition. I was pretty upset about it because there is no way anyone made anything cheaper than that movie. That is the cheapest. I will argue until my dying breath. Children of the House is the cheapest movie ever made. Voiceover and paper. So if I can do it with voiceover and paper, someone else can do something else just as cool. Maybe you got action figures, you got a horror idea, or maybe you're really good with After Effects. Maybe you can make a podcast really scary. That's all you need is a recorder and a mic. Make it, get it out there. You can run whatever. Just if you have that creative bone and you want to scare somebody, there are a lot of venues out there. Get out there, do it. I mean, hell, you can do a Twitter now, right? I mean, wasn't there a movie? All it was
Yeah.
a Twitter feed, and it got turned into a movie because it got a big
Yeah.
audience.
Dear David, I think was the name of it.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it. If you're gonna wait, you don't want to do it because there's
Yeah.
too many opportunities out there for you to do it.
We totally agree with that because that's what we tell people when they ask us how to start a podcast. We tell them we started out doing our podcast in my closet on my phone. So,
and we kind of had to tell ourselves to do that too, because we talked about starting a podcast for quite some time before we finally did it. And then we were like, we just need to do it and, get it started.
Absolutely. You just got to do it. I think about just all the things I've heard about. Chris Angel? I saw him live in Vegas one time, and he made a joke. He said it took a lot of years to become an overnight success.
Yeah, that's genuinely the story that we hear from everyone, and we really like the idea behind it because it's like no matter what you're doing, just keep going. Even if you think nobody is watching or listening, you never know because somebody's out there listening or watching your stuff.
Yeah.
So here, I'll tell you one. So when you watch Children of the House, the first thing you're gonna notice is the name of one of the characters is Mia, Maya, right? So I made my wife pronounce Mia. So the backstory of that is yes, there is somebody I knew who had a name who was Mia but pronounced it. I mean, and she pronounced it Maya. I did it backwards. That's Mia. Mia is Mia, but I made my wife pronounce it Maya. And I did it for two reasons. One, I knew somebody who wrote their name and said it that way. But the other reason I did it was just so I would generate comments in my YouTube feed. I wanted to see how many people would comment. The early comments, I love this movie, but it's Mia, not Maya.
Yeah.
But it generated so much content that it pushed it up in the algorithm.
Yeah.
That's one of the ways you could find, if you ever make a mistake, people will always, you'll find out you got like more people listening and watching than you realize.
Yeah, one of the things we always have to remind ourselves is negative comments are still engagement.
People want to argue over the stupidest things. Like, how stupid is it to correct the way a name is pronounced?
Yeah, I mean, you wrote it, so I feel like you would know what you want it to be pronounced as.
But that's the internet, right? That's the internet.
Right.
Although, it really does generate, the conversation, the engagement and everything. And when I get called Salem, I do instantly correct someone, or I think to myself, like, because I was picking up food from a place once and they come out and they're like, Salem. And I was sending a voice message to a friend and I'm like, did you seriously hear that person call me Salem? Like, who has ever pronounced the name Salem?
Have you never heard of Where the Witches Were Burned? Have you never heard of that?
Come on.
Well, at least you don't have like a really weird name. So my full name is Rowena, but I go by Ro because nobody can remember it or pronounce it or anything. But people will call me Roy, Rex, Roxana, like Row.
Row is the one that is the most common. So.
Yeah.
But it's Ro, R-O-W.
It's
like,
not
come
that
on.
hard.
Yeah.
I had a buddy in film school. His name was Lorne, Lorne. And whenever we would go to a restaurant, like with takeout, he would give him the name Chad. And I finally asked him, I was like, "Why?" I said, "Why do you give him Chad?" He goes, "Because it's not worth everybody mispronouncing Lorne."
Yeah.
So he gave him
It's
Chad.
so funny because I feel like now people would know how to pronounce it because of Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, you would think so, but I mean, I rarely give my last name because that's a good way to just stop a conversation. It's like people will literally pause on me with that last name.
There's this musician in this band that here in Tulsa that we were like really into back in the day, and his last name was so different and hard to pronounce and everything that he decided to change it to Fisher, which was the town that he grew up in, because nobody questioned him about
That's
his
so
name. When he
funny.
called up, it would be like
Mhm.
Chad Fisher or whatever. But when he would say his real name, people would be like, who or what? And he got so tired of that. So that's, he started going by Fisher instead of, and then he started a band called his actual last name, which I thought was really funny.
That's so funny.
But it was a cool name. It was Van Dievender.
Oh.
That's a hard name to say. I mean,
Yeah.
it's easier to say than I bet you it is to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like that's funny.
I have to pee so bad.
I'm sorry.
Trying not to be rude, but
Sorry.
Is that the end? Is that the end? That's the way you should end everyone from here on out. From here on out, that's just like, all right, guys,
Salem
I
out.
gotta pee. Oh, okay. That's the essential, like the Oscars playing me off. All right, guys, I gotta pee.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's an effective way. I feel like we've been talking to you for a while now, and I didn't realize how long it had been.
Points that we wanted to, I think so.
I think so. Is there anything else that you think that our audience should know about any of your work or anything that you do, or is there anything that you want to tell them about where to find you?
Yeah, you can find me on all the social medias, vintage8.com. I'm on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, Vintage8. Be on the lookout for my comic book Edie. We're gonna bound that into a full graphic novel for Christmas for spooky season. So it'll be in a full graphic novel by Halloween.
Awesome.
Another one. What's that?
That's awesome. I'm really looking forward to our spooky Christmas.
Yeah, I mean Halloween's like first Christmas for me.
Yes.
But I got another one coming out called The Demon Inside. We should have a home for that sooner or later. And then, like I said, I just finished the script for The Children of the House, which I'm going to be shopping soon. And I got a lot of ideas for my analog horror channel that I can't wait to do. I'm just kind of waiting for time because in my other life, I'm a documentarian. So I have movies that have been on PBS and stuff like that.
Cool.
Music videos. So whenever I'm not doing horror films, I'm making commercials, doing documentaries and stuff like that, and teaching at LSU.
That's funny because a lot of the people we've talked to who have been horror film makers are also documentarians.
And I'm also very much interested in doing that as well. Like I have so many different documentary ideas, and I also have like short film ideas and everything. So yeah, I'm not in school for it or anything, but I have a lot of interest for it. So
Do it. Don't waste. I'll tell you, the first feature I ever got to do was called Proof of the Devil. A buddy of mine wanted to do a movie, and it's a little found footage movie that we did on a very minuscule budget. and he got me to do it. The same year I directed that movie, I actually won a Christian Country Music Award because I also did music videos, Christian, like I did country music videos. So I won that year. I won the award, and I literally the next day went and directed Proof of the Devil.
That's hilarious. That's so funny how things work out.
Yeah.
So I can remember getting that call. But like, yeah, so I mean, I've done all kinds of little things like that. I mean, but yeah, I mean, that's part of it. You shoot what people pay, and then you save your money up, and you go do what you want to do.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time and for spending your Sunday with us. We really appreciated it. And this has been so much fun.
It has.
This has been a blast. I'm serious. You got to end all these. Like, I will be mad. I said, don't check in on a future podcast, and it does not end with her saying, with Salem going like, all right, guys, I got a piece. So this means the podcast is done.
We're definitely going to do it because we've been looking for a way to end it. We never end it right. Like, it's so awkward every time we try to end.
I don't know. Like, that's great. Like, I mean, you could get known for that. Like, oh, it's the I Gotta Pee Girls.
Yeah. That's accurate.
Just to recap, we started this conversation about murder, getting murdered, all then we finished on pee. Man, I don't know how you could cover anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true.
Well, it's great, guys. I appreciate it. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.